Discussion agenda. 15, discussion of proposed funding for the 2022-2023 and 2023-2024 projects as seen in Exhibit E. And Mr. Beatmore, you're going to take this one.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Ross. We wanted to give our public here, you did get to go on a tour, and I appreciate all of you taking time to come in early and do that. We put together a little video for our public to see parts of Irmo that they may have not have seen. So we're going to show just a brief video. If y'all will take a few seconds and watch the video. I want to thank our communications staff for putting this video together. They did a great job. So thank you, Amanda, and your staff.
Lexington Richland School District 5 has a strong legacy of excellence. Much of that legacy stems from Irmo High School, which was built in 1964. That makes it over 55 years old. On average, the lifespan of a school is between 40 and 50 years. With the aging process comes wear and tear, which means our beloved Irmo High School needs some renovations to bring the building into the 21st century. These improvements include a new media center, 21st century classrooms and labs, HVAC and roof improvements, increased security features, ADA accessibility, an updated administrative area, and upgraded ergonomic furniture. All of these improvements will cost around $49 million and will be completed using short-term borrowing. We are excited to accomplish this without a bond referendum and with a decrease in the current tax rate. Even more, these upgrades will potentially save the district money in the long run on energy costs. For reference, Chapin High School was built in 1971 and had major renovations completed between 2013 and 2015. Dutch Fork High School was built in 1992 with the addition of the Health Science Building in 2014. Spring Hill High School was built in 2013. Irmo High School added its West Wing in 1974 and the Center for the Arts in 2014. However, the East Wing, the oldest high school facility in our district, is in dire shape and needs major improvements to create equitable learning spaces for our students and in our facilities.
School District 5 is known for our awesome schools, and one day I'll be a yellow jacket at Irmo High School. Please make it a school I can be proud of. My friend and I love this district and want a high school that shines across our state and matches the excellence of its students. Please help us to be Irmo strong and support these improvements to Irmo High School.
Thank you. I do want to take 1 minute to, before I talk about what Ms. Huddle said earlier. I know that our facilities team does a good job here. They're keeping the school clean. So this is no reflection at all on how they're maintaining the school. It's an old building. It's 57 years old, the East Wing is. So this is no reflection on our facilities team. I feel it's our job to provide a safe and secure environment for our students, staff, and visitors at Irmo High School. We need updated classroom space, teaching spaces. They're important. When you compare Irmo High teaching space to our other high schools, we come up a little short, as you have seen through your tour. We have standards in the district. Irmo High does a great job. Their classrooms are actually smaller than our other classrooms in the district, so we're not comparing apples to apples. The demands in education has changed, and again, we have maintained facilities, but we can't change. We do not have the flexibility here in the building in the East Wing at Irmo that we have in our other schools. A long time ago, Irmo was innovative, but the days have passed and have gone, I'm afraid. We need flexible classroom furniture that we do not have. Some of those desks, Mr. Hogan sat in a couple of years ago. And we have furniture that's probably been here since '64, unfortunately. It's still in good shape, but it's old. Our technology, we have updated technology some. We can claim some of those smart boards, but we're now looking, smart boards are kind of, Ms. Garris will talk a little bit. I don't want to step on her thunder, but there's new technology past smart boards nowadays, and Ms. Jeannie Garris will talk about that here in a minute. We had a study done in 2019 and rated Irmo High School as poor condition. Irmo High School has a need for significant changes, and the building's old. It would be almost impossible if you've seen the mechanical area. Mr. Lovelace, we went inside of that tonight. In between the floors, it creates a lot of challenges for us. So it would be almost impossible for us to make changes that would be cost effective for Irmo High School. We have 7 stairwells in the east wing. If when you went up those stairs, you could see they're not safe. They're just not safe environment. So the experts say between 40 and 50 years you should consider replacing a school. So Irmo High East Wing is 57 years old. Maintaining is nearly impossible. I think we do a great job. If we can build a new East Wing at Irmo High School, we can save money in the future on cost savings on energy. So tonight, we would like to recommend that you consider building a new East Wing for Irmo High School. So we are requesting, just as in discussion, about estimated $50 million, and that would be to build a new East Wing and to replace the roof at Irmo High School with that $50 million. I would like to talk about a couple things. We have capital budget we're going to talk to you in a second about. We have energy savings. That proposal is not due until November 1st. So we have changed our 5-year capital plan based on the ability to do energy savings. So we've changed that. We're just bringing it to you for your review. So we have 2 years of capital we wanted to discuss, and we'll bring back hopefully to the next board meeting for second reading. But we're hoping to address a lot of needs in energy savings. That is our hope. So that is why we're proposing to change our capital needs for the next 2 years. So what I've done, and we'll be glad to answer questions now, but I would love to bring Mr. Cannon up, Ms. Garris, and Mr. Wiseman up to talk about capital before we entertain any questions, if that's the pleasure of the board.
Do you mean for the next meeting questions, or you want them now?
It's really whatever you prefer. We can bring and do our presentation, or we can answer questions now.
What's the pleasure of the board? Would you like to ask questions now? Ms. Hudley?
I don't have any questions now. I'd like to see the presentation.
The presentation, okay. How about that, Ian? That's good. Wait for the presentation. We'll bring the questions in, and thank you. We're excited about it.
Mr. Cannon is, and we're glad Mr. Cannon's back, by the way. So, Mr. Cannon?
Madam Chair, Dr. Ross, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity tonight. As Mr. Biedenbaugh indicated, what I wanted to bring to y'all was the capital budget we are proposing for fiscal year 22-23. So this would be starting next school year. This is a little earlier than we typically bring it to you, but we want to do it now because we want to start the early planning process, and we just need that time in order to get ready for next summer. Just to remind you, the capital plans designed to ensure district maintains physical schools while addressing our needs. These typically include roof replacements, HVAC replacements, technology, vehicle, curriculum-related improvements, and any funds for contingencies. This year's plan we are proposing is based on projected funds of $15 million available at the proposed millage rate. Although this is a multi-year plan, we are only proposing what's coming up for fiscal year 22-23. As with previous years, we will bring the following years to you annually as we update that. This was your spreadsheet provided in your board packet. Again, it was for only 2 years. Typically, you would see this for 5 years projected out. As Mr. Biedenbaugh indicated, we are still in kind of a hold pattern with our energy savings performance contracts. So until that has kind of got defined, we only wanted to give you kind of a 2-year look ahead. To start with this coming year, just to go over our major projects, so the first large one you'll see is the Chapin High School Stadium improvements. We're proposing about $8.5 million for this. Chapin High School Stadium, it was built in 1973, was the original home side press box, which is still there today. In the early 1990s, the visiting side was added. Today, we have just under 4,000 seats in that stadium. We are proposing we increase that to somewhere around 6,500 seats. I've included here Dutch Fork High School is presently at 6,665 and Irmo High is at 8,200 for comparison. The 5A seating requirement. So the stadium at Chapin High, as you know, when it was constructed, Chapin was still, I think it was originally a single A, went to a double A, and no improvements have been made since. The 5A seating requirements, so the South Carolina High School League says you have to have a minimum 4,000 seats to host a high school playoff event. You have to have 5,000 seats to host a high school semifinal event. You have to have 6,000 seats to host a high school championship game. So we are trying to propose these stadium improvements to get Chapin High School at their 5A classification so that we can see these playoff events are held there. The improvements we're proposing is press box replacement, new concession restroom, visiting locker room facility. A program y'all may have heard about at Chapin High, the CSPM program is really popular. It's something the school has taken upon themselves to get kids involved, doing sports broadcasting, things of that nature. So one thing the school has asked is, can we look at bringing classroom curriculum and maybe in an improved press box situation? The next major project, Crossroads, the gym building you'll see highlighted kind of in red here. So that would be the building at the far back southwest portion of campus. That gym's a 1993 installation. It's gone a couple of years longer than we'd like, but it's in need of replacements. We're proposing that. Finally, our field turf. In 2012, all three high school, our stadiums, had field turf installed. That turf is projected at an 8-year service life and a warranty. I had some turf folks come out a little over a year ago to kind of give us their recommendation. Their recommendation at that time was you had another good season of turf use for all your stadium events. So we are in year 10. This is the 10th football season played on our turf. And so we're proposing the turf be proposed this next summer. I know I've had a question in the past about, was this a good investment for the district? And I think you could talk to any AD, any coach and say absolutely. With the growing of lacrosse, with all across our district, you know, that stadium's getting used year round. Finally, Dutch Fork High School, we're going to need some track repairs there. We're proposing $500,000 for that. This particular track gets probably more wear and tear than most. As y'all know, it is around the football stadium, so you get people on that thing every Friday night, every day during practice. So it gets a little more surface use than our other tracks. At this time, I will ask Ms. Garris to come to the podium to kind of talk through her technology proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. The next two slides are our basic technology budget. And as I presented to you before, we kind of look at round numbers, we look at estimated numbers. So when you look at each of these items listed here, the numbers in parentheses are the estimated numbers that we would purchase. So for example, the first thing is Chromebooks, 4,500. One of the things, especially with Chromebooks in the cases, COVID has affected a lot of things with technology. This is one because previously we were not one-to-one devices in our elementary schools, and we are now. So that's added to what we would typically purchase. And it's been interesting as we had a refresh cycle in place for 6th grade and 9th grade. So now we've made some shifts, and so we're doing a cycle with 3rd grade and 8th grade to try to maximize the time with those Chromebooks. So with this next year, so this year we actually purchased 3 sets of Chromebooks, so to speak. We purchased for 3rd grade, so our 3rd graders have brand new Chromebooks. We've purchased for 8th grade. They'll be getting those very soon. They just came in recently. And we've also purchased a set for teachers because we look at the age of the Chromebook. You typically can get about 6 years out of a Chromebook. That's how long they're supported. Now, I will say middle school, that can get a little hairy with middle schoolers. I have one myself, so I can tell you they're the hardest on devices and technology. But they've really done a good job, and by having our devices in elementary school, we're hoping to build some of that sense of responsibility and care and understanding of devices. So this next year, this 4,500, that would actually purchase sets of Chromebooks for our third graders and our eighth graders, which we would like to be our cycle going forward. But we'll also need to purchase for our 10th graders. And again, this is sort of a COVID reason. Last year, we did not purchase for ninth graders. As you all know, the year started kind of crazy. Their devices were only 3 years old, so we said we know they can make it, so it's time for them. So that's why you see a little bit more than in the past. And these are all rounded numbers, obviously. Cases, we can reuse cases. They don't always need a new device, a new case with a device, so in this case, there's a few less cases. Laptops, desktops, those are primarily for our teachers, obviously. Our numbers of desktops have reduced greatly, and basically desktops tend to be in our labs, our computer labs, and in our front offices, support staff, things like that. But even many of those from COVID, we learned, you know what, we have to be ready to go mobile. And so we've really kind of shifted that a little bit to replacing laptops. And we've done a big laptop replacement over the past 2 years. Just because the needs of teachers really changed with COVID. We needed more RAM, we needed to be faster, we needed SSDs, all some different specs, and the teachers have all gotten new laptops at this point, and they saw a big difference. So we're really glad, but we still will need to keep that replacement going. What we don't want is to buy everybody something new and then 5 years later have to have that big chunk of money again. So we're trying to keep that refresh cycle to where it's budget predictable, so to speak, even though COVID threw that a little bit out of the water, but we still want to be predictable with that. Some of the next things you see on here, parts and repairs, those have gone up, obviously, just because of more devices and more mobile devices. It makes sense. The more you carry a device back and forth, and that's staff and students, the more damages you're going to have. So we've seen our parts and repairs prices increase over the last 2 years for those big reasons. Smart boards and panels. This is one thing that down the road I think we'll be looking at some other things. I'm not going to put the cart before the horse, but as Mr. Biedenbaugh alluded to, I put smartboard/panels. So most people are used to seeing smartboards and projectors in the classroom. Interactive panels are really the new technology, and you can see those if you've toured. Well, you haven't seen those yet because we just got them in at Piney Woods. So all of the classrooms at Piney Woods have the new interactive panels. We have a few in other places throughout the district that we've done as pilots and we've tried. They have become now more cost effective than replacing a smart board or a panel. And teachers like them more. They're super easy to use. There's some challenges with going in retroactive with panels in terms of networking and things like that, but that's what we're looking to go forward. So that's some in there. That 100 is really just replacement. So as smart boards and projectors need replaced, we'll have to balance out if we can replace with a panel versus a smart board or a projector. That's sort of situational. But I would encourage you, if you go to Piney Woods anytime, to see the panels. Teachers really liked them. They're taking a long time to get. I would say that's one challenge we're having right now with technology. We typically would order things in the spring to get them in the summer to implement over the summer before school started. We're now needing to order months and months in advance and hoping that they come in time. So, for example, the panels at Piney Woods, we ordered those and predicted the shipping was supposed to come in June. They arrived this week. Last week, sorry. We installed them on Saturday, so they were up and running today. But that's some of the challenges we have with lots of devices, and I think eventually that will get better, but that's just the reality. Telephones, printers, those are just day-to-day things that as they break or things are added, we have to add. So we always put a little bit of that in the budget. The next slide here, our big purchase for this upcoming year, and we had sort of predicted this or laid this out a little bit earlier in the spring. One of the things we need to replace is firewalls. We actually have a total of 6, so what this plan would do is we would replace 3 this upcoming year. We'd like to replace them in the summer. That's less intrusive. Obviously, there's students and staff are not in the building. So we would replace 3 with the 2022 capital money. We would replace the other 3 the next year. And I won't get into details unless you want to ask those questions later, but they say there's 3 inside, 3 outside, so we would do the 3 inside first. That's where we look at internal security. We would be upgrading these firewalls to some demands that we've not had in the past. Again, mainly security reasons, and there's some features in the next level up firewall that I think will make a big difference for us. So they are very expensive, as you can see. So typically we have a technology budget of about $3 million. So you'll see this is we're asking for $3.2 million. That only covers one firewall, but because we've been able to do less in some other areas, one of those being wireless access points. Last year we replaced, or this current capital year, we put in our budget for 600 access points. Upcoming year, I only put 50 because we've replaced them all. So really the 50 is just to replace anything that needs added or needs replaced. But because all of those are so new, we can balance that budget that way. So you see that here's only 50. So we tried to lessen some things to add to be able to afford the firewalls, but we will need a little extra to cover that big expense. Security cameras, and Mr. Beedenbow did not say this, but when we meet with schools, they always want more security cameras. And I always say it's Murphy's Law. Wherever you don't have a camera is where something will happen. And so this budget right here with 180, what we do each year is we look at the oldest model camera and we replace those. We want to maintain, and that's one of the challenges with security cameras. You can add and add and add, but you have to be able to maintain those. And every camera is like a little computer. Every camera goes to a server. You have to have server space. So it's kind of it's not just one camera. There's really a much bigger picture with security cameras. So this 180 would replace, probably add a few here and there. That's typically what happens. But that's where that number comes from. We look at the model that needs replaced. Servers are one of those things that we always have a few old spares on hand, so I put some in the budget. Sometimes we don't need those, so we can spend those somewhere else. But if we don't plan for those and we need them, that stops instruction. So that's an important thing to at least plan that we have. We don't buy those up front, we buy those as we need them. Same with UPS battery backups. Cabling repairs, we have cabling repairs every day. I shouldn't say every day. Every week probably something has to be repaired. Cables run, cables go bad. So we've always put money in there for those kind of things as well. All of our schools now have interior digital signage and VBRIC, which does, like in our elementary schools, it does a morning news show. And so I have a little bit in the budget. We're in good shape with that, but I put a little bit in there just for repairs. We have one school right now, we're sending their encoder to get repaired, just things like that. So $2,000 is enough just to do the little things for that. ID system printers, I don't have mine on, our ID badges that all of our kids have, all our staff has. There's a cost to those, so we always plan that one might go out. So we put one in the budget just to plan for that. So that's really, if you add all those up, I think I did the math right, it ends up to be about $3.2 million. Are we asking questions now or at the end? At the end? Okay. So I'll be glad to answer any questions later. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wiseman for transportation first.
Thank you. Good evening. I've been here 22 years, and the first time I've had the pleasure to speak to the board. So I have a lot of catching up to do.
Well, welcome.
Could I have my slide? Is it up there? Oh, I got it. Oh, you didn't tell me that.
Puts this right arrow.
It doesn't have wheels on it. I got it.
See that right arrow? There you go.
All right.
He's usually in a bus parking lot.
I hate public speaking, so forgive me. Since 2005, when I became the director, we started looking at the district and the activity fleet. And over the years, we've grown the fleet that I'll talk to you about in a minute, but specifically for tonight, the budget is talking about annually we provide, the district provides me $200,000 to upgrade or buy new school or activity buses. So this is a plan. Every year we look at replacing one of the older buses in the fleet. We look at their miles, we look at their age, we look at their replacing the parts, and just the overall look of the bus. When I first started this, a bus cost roughly $96,000. Today, a bus of similar abilities will cost us $156,000. That's with some upgrades with the engines that's required for EPA standards. We're including some things that we want to look at with lap belts built into the seats. With lap belts, I think you should always have a fire suppression system on the bus. It adds to the safety of the students. We're adding backup cameras, sensors, and of course, air conditioning is something that obviously we need in South Carolina. So every year we look at the oldest fleet, or the oldest bus in the fleet, and start looking at when to replace it and how to replace it. So this is kind of my 4-year plan for the next 4 years of which activity buses we're actually going to replace. We have had the pleasure, oops, my turn. We now have a total of 36 activity buses. When I started here, we had 19. As we added buses, we had to look at, as more sports programs and activity trips and schools grow across the district, we have to go more places and do more things with the fleet that we have. So not only do we look at replacing buses, but we also look at adding additional buses. As you can see, that kind of breaks down the size of the buses. We have a number of different programs that the smaller buses like the golf team and tennis teams can use without having to use a lot of fuel. It also allows for a lesser class of CDL requirements, so we can train more people in getting those. And we also have 2 of them just specifically to replace the magnet buses in the event one of those breaks down. So we always try to have a backup plan for everything that we do. With every white bus that I buy, I also look at buying the yellow bus to be able to support what the district does in the yellow bus fleet. Our maintenance for the yellow buses comes out of Newberry and Fairfield, or Fairfield County. So sometimes I don't have the support on hand that I would like to have. So putting one of our yellow buses is legal. They're outfitted with the stop arm and the other requirements that we have. So we always have a backup plan, literally for everything that we do. When I arrived here, our average fleet was about 19 years old. In the last 16 years, we now have an average fleet of 10 years old. Once I replace those buses, I should have it down to about 8 years old, which surprisingly, I used to be able to say we had a better rate than the state, but over the years, the state has improved their bus fleet. My hat's always off to Molly Spearman for what she's done for the yellow side of the transportation department. And one of the things that we also do with all of our activity buses, we include them in all the FEMA requirements and training, evacuation the areas up in the Chapin area in the event of emergency. Years ago, we sent a bunch of them down to Charleston to help evacuate for St. Matthews, or Hurricane Matthews. So we're involved in a lot of things that most people aren't aware of. But we do have a great fleet. We want to maintain that, and hopefully we can replace one bus at a time at a year. All right, any questions? I think that's it. Thank you.
Does that conclude, or we have one more? Ms. Beatonbaugh, okay, you want to?
No, ma'am, that concludes our presentation for tonight on capital
Okay,
funds.
we'll entertain any questions from any, we can go back to anyone that you need, so.
I was curious, have we looked I think we have 3 elementary schools that use the pods, Nursery Road, Harbison West, and Chapin Elementary.
Yes, ma'am.
Have we ever looked, I don't know if there's a solution for the noise problem or not, but have we ever looked to see what other schools do and if there's something on the horizon we should plan for?
We want that to be in phase 2 of our building. It needs to be addressed. We feel like Irmo High School East Wing is more important, and trying to do that with the funding we have available is, so that we would look to bring that to you in phase 2.
But you do think it's something we should address?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, without a doubt.
Ms. Hines?
I would just say, I had that same question last week, and Leapart has actually converted that same structure into classrooms, and I think that is something for us to definitely, maybe we can all go look at that and see how they've done that. It makes the classrooms very interestingly shaped, but from what the teachers there say, it has done a world of difference, because that pod learning environment in elementary school, whew,
It was in style and
they're doing a
it
great
just didn't
job.
work.
They are doing a great job over there. for
Ms.
sure.
Hines is right, though, that's a good example to look at, because they did fix that, and we could do that at the other schools. You have a question?
I have a question for the parliamentarian. I wanted to make I think, a motion, but is it proper during this, am I pointing at during a discussion to make a motion to pass something, or since
Yeah,
well, I know that, but I wanted to know from a point of practicality, can you do that under Robert's Rules of Orders? It's just under discussion.
I think while there's a motion on the floor that's under discussion, until that motion is disposed of, we can't bring up another motion. We have to wait till that one's disposed of.
What my question was, those during discussion, it's not on the agenda. It just says discussion agenda, but it doesn't say first
it's not on
reading
the
or
action.
anything.
I think
or
that's what it
action.
means. Yeah, you don't. No.
Okay. Well, anyway, I wanted to read this just, and I wanted the people in Irmo to understand, what this board stands for, because we heard some things from public participation. But if I could have, I would have made the motion here at Irmo High School. I moved that the capital improvement bonded indebtedness not more than 8% of the total assessed value of the district assets, and a total of new issuances not greater than $50 million shown in Exhibit E be given. Okay, that the lion's share of that $50 million is going to go, if it's passed, to Irmo High School. So I wanted you guys to hear when we talked about, I think in facilities meeting, I think we talked about a new paradigm. And what we were talking about was putting some additional funds into the Irmo community. And I don't think that was interpreted properly. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, that if we could tonight here in your home turf, we would have done that. But we plan to do it in the future.
Mr. Lovis, and I think that's a good point. I think you were trying to answer some of the questions. But that can be a motion, and that can be set on the next agenda. So, but what I'd like to bring us back to any questions, I had a couple, but I was going to wait. Any other questions to our presentation we just had? I had one on the security cameras. Do we have like a set pattern for high school, elementary, middle, and it varies, or do we allow every school the same amount of security cameras?
One thing we do is we bring in our security team. We have a great security team. Dr. Harris is assembled. So we let them make recommendations, and sometimes we often bring in Lexington County, Richland County, our school resource officers, and they make recommendations. So it's Ms. Garris.
It's not like each elementary gets
I'm gonna let
five,
Ms.
or each
Yeah, I'm gonna let
middle
Ms.
school gets
Garris.
10. Because I would think they're depending on the size of the campus.
And the layout of the campus.
The layout of the campus.
If you look at some of our schools that are built like Ballantyne Elementary, Oak Point, that have that same layout, it's pretty easy to predict and make them very similar. But then you
About
look at
Seven
Dutch Fork
Oaks.
Elementary, and it has doors and turns, and it's a very complex, the way it's laid out, just because of the add-ons and such. And then you look at Seven Oaks that has outside areas with gates. So
Yes.
it's really very specific to the layout of the building. And so we work, as Mr. Biedenbow just said, we work with the security officers and also the school administration. They know the flow of their students. They know where their staff comes in and out. So it's a team effort in that. And fare isn't always equal. And so I would say with security cameras, that's true, because it really is very dependent on the needs.
So it is
we try
on
to
one
be
size
in the
fits
same ballpark, though. Let me put it say that way.
I got you. I just wondered how we made sure it was equity, but I can see that one size doesn't fit all. So,
Yeah.
And then I had one on the bus drivers. Are we? This is.
I have one for Ms. Garris.
Okay. While
She's still up there.
Yeah.
I hate to make you walk back and forth. No, but I think you had, I don't know these terms, so just have to help me with this, but I'm interested in connectivity and the internet divide and hotspots. Okay, and I know in the last year in the board meeting, we discussed this, and we had some ESSER funds, I believe, that paid for I think it was
Yes, sir.
$200,000 or $300,000 worth of hotspots. Was that the 60 items that you had on the list for $45,000? or
No,
is it
sir,
just
those are
something
two
else?
different things. The hotspots were things that we sent home with families so they had connectivity at home. Last year, the state funded those, and I think it was state ESSER money that funded those actually. So it didn't really cost the district any money for those hotspots that we sent home to families that qualified. There was a very specific criteria for the qualifications. This year, the early August, the state came and said the office that did that requested some additional funding to put that through the first semester of this year. Apparently, they didn't get it, so it came back to the districts. So the district put that in our ESSER 3 proposal that you all passed, thank you. And in that, it funded hotspots. I think it was $30,000 for each year. So what the state did was we kept all of those, the hardware, the devices, so the physical hotspot. And so now what we will pay for through ESSER 3 funds is the monthly cost of those hotspots for families that qualify. And so in that ESSER 3 plan, there's a criteria that there's a school-based, they call it a triage team, and it's administrators, guidance, just some support folks, teachers in that team. They help identify those families. The social workers, guidance counselors do a great job with that. So we're able to pay for that monthly service through the ESSER 3 funds for those families.
Okay, so that will run out when ESSER 3 is over with 2023, and then we'll have to put that back in our budget. Is that what I interpret?
Yes, sir.
Or unless the state miraculously gets us some internet coverage all over the state, huh? Okay.
Right. The broadband is such a big push, but realistically, 3 years from now, how much better will that be? We don't know. I hope it's much better. We're very fortunate. We have less than 5% of our students that don't have internet access. So we have comparatively, we have much fewer. But in the budget, the wireless access points, those are like, I'm trying to see, there's one in the building. They're in every room. They're kind of a rectangular shaped. Do you see it?
Okay.
Oh, it's right over there. So right over there up on the ceiling, that's a wireless access point. So every classroom has one. We have one in here. Big spaces often have two. That's just so that your wireless devices connect.
Sort of like boosters is what they are, the boosters?
Something like that, yes. That's a
Okay.
good way to compare them.
All right, thank you.
Correct. And we've replaced all of those in all the schools except for a few, which is why we don't have many next year. So they're new.
Thank you. Mine was about this. Well, I have two left. One's for Mr. Cannon and one for Mr. Wiseman. I was going to ask. It's really not about the maintenance and all of buses, but all over the state it's a shortage of bus drivers. I just thought you'd give us an update how are we doing on bus drivers?
Currently, we run 106 buses today. About 28 of those are special needs buses. We try to keep an 8 on the bus with those kids. Right now, we're at roughly 96%. We've maintained that since the beginning of the school year. We've been fortunate enough to maintain a lot of good drivers. We're working hard with Ms. Rawls over there to continue that. We have a lot of challenges I just saw the Richland School District 2's pay, and I was just tweeting them and saying, hey, do I need to renew my CDL? I'd say we're doing pretty good. Actually, this is a typical year for us. We stay about 96, 98%. We have about 6 people in training right now, various stages of training that'll put us back at 100%. But it ebbs and flows on a daily basis. COVID hadn't impacted us that much this year, onesies and twosies here. So we're maintaining a pretty good fleet, and we have enough substitutes and staff that we utilize to give some release to some of our drivers and keep all the buses running. Very seldom do we double up. We haven't had to do any double runs as other districts or triple runs. So it's pretty close to normal as we can get in the transportation department.
Well, see, you're just doing such a great job.
Thank
Because
you.
that really is. I mean, I've heard that all over the state, that it's been
It's a national
and national.
issue. We've just been very fortunate.
And who drives our kids is so important. I mean, that's the key. And then, Mr. Cannon, I have one more. I know we're going to replace the turf, and I remember being on the board when we made that decision. So I'm glad that you're telling me we did make the right decision. But I wanted you to update me. There was some concern about more injuries on that, sometimes on turf. But then I heard that and this isn't something I know, I didn't play football or anything, but it, you know, like, I was told by maybe a coach, this was several years ago when we first put it in there, that they had improved it. So I don't know that that's still a problem, but I just wanted to ask about if you'd ever heard that.
My answer would be I am not qualified to answer that. But I'll tell you what I will do. I'll talk to our ADs to see
Yeah, I'd love
what
to
information
hear,
they have and our athletic trainers, because I
in our
wouldn't want to tell you one way or the
presentation,
other. All right.
that was one of the, we were deciding to do
Sure.
it or not. And it
Sure.
really was cost effective, and we had so many more sports. I mean, I voted to put that in there. But I would just love a little update.
Okay.
It's not, I mean, I'm sure, and it'll be even improved for the new. But I just wanted to
We'll
find
do
out
some
about
homework
injuries.
for you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That was my last one. Any questions? Okay, we're good. Number 17. Oh, 16, I'm about to skip one. Discussion and first reading of proposed revisions to Board Policy FB Facilities Planning as seen in Exhibit F. Okay, Ms. Gardner.
I'd like to make a motion to approve discussion and first reading of proposed revisions to Board Policy FB Facilities Planning as shown in Exhibit F.
Is there a second? Ms. Huddle seconds. Any discussion? Since you made it, you wanted to start?
Yeah, we talked about this in the facility, or in the committee meeting that we had for policies, and so we wanted this particular policy to be more in line with what the School Boards Association recommended, and it basically just adds some more long-term goal specifics, like, we need a 5-year master facilities plan and a 10-year building program, and that's kind of what it adds to it. It just makes it more specific.
Specific, yes, and I think that's important. And I think we've learned tonight how important it is to have an ongoing facilities plan, very specific. Any other questions, statements? If not, want to vote on the first reading? All those in favor? And that's 6, and no opposed. Thank you. 17.
I have that one.
You want to do that one?
Yeah.
Discussion and first reading proposed revisions to Board Policy DIE, Fiscal Accounting and Audits, Exhibit G. Mr. Lovett.
Yeah, we discussed this in the policy meeting that we had. What day was it? Okay, the policy committee, we discussed this. Okay, this is a change to policy DIE. Okay, and I make the motion that the first reading approval be given to the following amendment to policy DIE. On the project greater than $5 million in total value, it is a policy to use the services of a qualified architect or professional engineer not associated in any way with the district personnel or design, construction, inspection teams or consultants to close out and certify that project construction meets the specification of the subject project. The project closeout professional shall be separate in addition to and independent in duties from the project resident engineer or construction project representative. The project closeout professional shall be selected in accordance with this policy and shall certify items including but not necessarily limited to contract compliance with permits, commissioning, staff training, warranties, closeout documents, inspection reports, construction deficiencies, and completion of final list of items to complete. This professional shall verify that bonds, contract amounts, lien waivers, change orders, retained amounts, and other documents are correct and due and payable before contractors receive final payments.
Okay, and that's in our packet. Is there a second? And Ms. Huddle seconds. Now, any discussion since you started it? You want to say anything other than what you read? Just a statement about it?
Well, I just say that in the past we've had a disconnect in our administration's handling of warranties, and I know we discussed that just recently with Mr. Biedenbaugh, Mr. Cannon too, that basically we would have facilities personnel working on warranty items that the contractor should have worked on, there was not a handoff from procurement to, to facilities. So we
It's
just
an
wanted to make
oversight.
sure that it is the policy of the school district to make those handoffs, that once the handoffs are made, that we keep track of whether it's contractor duties or once they're out of warranty, that the district's maintenance personnel takes those over. And this is not a criticism in any way. This goes on in a lot of industries that I've been involved in, but it needs specific attention in closeout, and our facilities people are naturally very, very busy because we've got them doing, things to keep these schools maintained, and a lot of times those items slip through the cracks. And so this was meant to not be in criticism, but to augment their abilities and to pass these things on in a manner. For example, let me just give you an example. Let's say a warranty is written on a standard form that a roofing warranty or bond would be on. And let's say that doesn't meet our specifications, but nobody is, technical enough in that field to understand that. And we get ourselves into something in a legal situation that because we accepted and signed something that, that we might not, should have been worded differently. Well, nobody can be blamed for that because they're very technical things. But if you have an expert in that to close these projects out, that prevents those kinds of things. And that's why we decided that we would put that out.
All right, I saw Ms. Hines' hand and then Mr. Hogan.
Okay. I just wanted to get some clarity from Dr. Ross and Mr. Lovelace. I was at the policy meeting when we discussed this, and I know Mr. Lovelace had submitted this revision under policy FEC, and then when we were having discussions, I think Dr. Ross suggested that if we included this clause, it would work better under the fiscal audits policy. And so I just have two questions. One, did we get council to review the language? I know Mr. Lovelace said he had submitted it, and we were going to have somebody vet it just to make sure that it was clear, and I don't believe that it's consistent with School Board Association policies, which is absolutely okay. I'm just curious as to whether or not we properly vetted them. And two, Mr. Lovelace, I know when we talked about this at our policy meeting, that $5 million number, you mentioned it was kind of like an arbitrary number. I didn't know if we had gotten it. It was my understanding that we might talk to facilities, talk about that in the facilities meeting, or we were going to kind of, tie down where we got that $5 million number, and if it was high enough or low enough, or because it was mentioned that it was an arbitrary number and we just threw $5 million out there. If we're going to memorialize this into a policy, I would love to know what that feedback is, and Dr. Ross, I'd love to know if we submitted this to council for review.
Ms. Hines, since I think that's three questions. We've got Ms. White here. Did you handle? You did not handle that. Okay. So I'll let Dr. Ross and Mr. Lovelace answer that. But you want to go first, Dr. Ross, since it would be on your watch.
Yeah, so we were just looking at the appropriate placement for these, and some of your board policies, you look at it, will overlap, or there may be some items that may fit really well in facilities, but then others fit well in audits. So, and when I say submitted it to legal counsel, that was this afternoon. So it will be reviewed before the second reading, but I think that's wise counsel to just make sure we get another set of eyes, and then you would have that to determine for second reading. So great point.
Okay, Mr. Lovelace, you okay with that answer, or do you have any?
Yeah, well, I just give my opinion. I mean, on the $5 million. in the construction business or industry, a project that's $5 million is not a small project.
Right.
Okay, and if you were to make that, on every project, it would be cumbersome and it would be really, burdensome, because some projects you just don't need that level of scrutiny. I think that if you were to make it $10 million, we don't do that many $10 million projects, and to be honest with you, I think that would defeat the effort that we're making, because we're trying to help the facilities department and the purchasing department. We're trying to make sure that the documentation is there to make sure that the district does not spend unwisely. So my recommendation would be somewhere around the $5 million level, because that would mean that it would be worthy of that kind of expenditure, but not overly burdensome on a small project. So.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan, you had a hand up.
Kind of a question. I mean, is there figure out the best way to word this, almost a uniform plan as to how we close things out right now? So there's nothing in place right now, right?
We have, and Mr. Bemo or Mr. Cannon, if you want to speak to it, but currently on a large construction plan, we do have what's called a second-party auditor, or a second-party evaluator that would work on that. You would like to speak to what we currently do?
Sure. So, for instance, our Piney Woods project, we have an architect that works for the district. Part of their job responsibilities are to do a lot of the closeout documents, make sure we get all warranties, all closeout documents, things of that nature. I know there's a proposal out there now for an RFQ for a second party to come in and just verify all those documents are in place. But prior to this point, we relied on the design professional that worked for the district. That is part of their responsibilities, but that's obviously what's being discussed here today.
So, but just so I'm hearing correctly, the responsibilities that the architect would lay out, that would be something that's included in their contract. That's probably, we're paying for it, right? I guess what I'm getting at right now.
So
for what we've already built.
Correct.
So my question is this something we're looking at going forward, or is this something?
Yeah, and that would be important. So if this is something the board decides, we'd have to make it clear to whatever design professional, hey, we want you to do this, this, and this at closeout. We will have a second party come behind to verify these things. We just need to communicate what the expectation is, who's responsible for what, so that the district's using that allocation of resources appropriately.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll come back. Let me get Ms. Huddle.
Just a suggestion, while we're looking at the wording, to include the word licensed after qualified licensed architect or professional engineer, because we had a problem before where they weren't licensed.
That's a good recommendation.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good recommendation.
I agree with that. No, the reason why I drafted this was to help you, okay, and to help because we were faced with a closeout situation, and still are at Chapin High School.
Sure.
And it's going to cost a lot of money to fix that, and it was not your problem. You weren't even here. But but what we had was we had a construction manager, we had architects, and we had all of that, and yet the district is now going to have to go back and either coax or force somebody into fixing this that should have been done on their dime, on the contractor's dime. And so what I want to make sure of is that they pass off, and that everything, that we make absolutely certain that we know whose responsibility and where they lie, and that that in the future you're set up with clarity, with surety, with everything that you should know. I mean, there's wording in these bonds and so forth, these construction bonds, which can make a tremendous amount of difference in who pays for this stuff. And we need to be totally aware, of what we have. And those things are negotiable, believe it or not, even, when you get down to the end of the project. So I just want to make sure that we're negotiating from a position of strength. And, you know, I don't know that many architects that are also lawyers, okay? And so, therefore, you know, I wanted an extra, you know, we want you to have an extra level of comfort. That's it.
Okay, good. All right, no more questions. We'll have the voting on this first reading. All those in favor of Mr.
I don't,
Logan?
did we get a second?
We did,
I
that's how we
second it?
discussed, yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, we've been discussing. If not, we couldn't be discussing. She seconded, okay. All those in favor of this motion, raise your hand. And that is 6-0. And we'll look forward to you coming back with your information. You've got a draft of it, Ms. White? Yes, okay, great. All right, that was number 17. Number 18, Mr. Hogan, you are
Chairwoman
always on
Hammond,
it.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there, oh, she already has her hand up, Ms. Hines seconds. All those in favor? That is 6-0, and we are adjourned. Thank you.